We're live. It's live, so be careful. Where did Warren go?
I keep seeing a flicker on the Chambers camera. I don't know if there's some kind of glitch in the system, but it blinks occasionally.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. So I'm going to dispense with the gavel so I don't break anyone's ears on the internet. Before we call the meeting to order, we'll ask everyone to please rise and be led in the pledge by Warren Johnson and remain standing. I believe we have Brian Jenkins from First Baptist of Woodstock online.
Yes.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brian,
Yes, I'm here.
go ahead.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for your goodness to us, for the way that you continue to provide us and bless us during this time of change when things are different. We remain thankful for all that you do. I ask now for wisdom and guidance for our mayor and our city council, for the leadership of our city, that they would have wisdom to know what is best to do. I also pray for grace as we continue to go through this COVID situation, for our schools as they continue to meet the leadership in those schools and in our medical community. I also pray that you would bless this time and this gathering. May it be useful and productive for the people of Woodstock. And we ask it in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brian. All right, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the City Council, the City of Woodstock, to order for Monday, August 10th, 2020. First order of business, just housekeeping for council. In case you didn't hear, we're still going to do a roll call vote, if that's okay. Now I'll turn it over to Colin for the announcements.
We have announcements for August 10, 2020. Did you know Woodstock residents can request a special trash pickup anytime you have large items that cannot be sold or donated? You can call Waste Management at 404-794-6707. And the last one is stay connected to your city government. Sign up to receive email notifications at woodstockga.gov. I'll tell you, if you're not following us on Facebook, you should try that too. That's all we got.
Thank you, sir. Item 5 of the public comment. Is anyone in the audience here for public comment? No. Rhonda, do we have anybody signed up online? Okay. Thank you. Skipping down to item 7, which is consent agenda, items 1 through 7. Does any council member wish to pull any agenda item to consider separately? Having heard none, I'll entertain a motion.
Give a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 7.
Second.
And a Tracy second. Any further discussion?
If I can pull item 6, please.
Okay.
Yeah, correct, item 6.
Are you okay with amending your
I'm fine with
motion?
that. I motion to pull item 6 from the consent agenda.
All right. Still have a second by Tracy. Further discussion. Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4, 5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Let's go back and approve 1 through 5 and 7. Can I have a motion?
Give a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 5 and 7.
Second.
We We have a Warren second. Further discussion? Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4, 5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. All right, Warren, on number 6, you have questions?
Question for Brantley? You and I have talked a lot about the alcohol between distilled spirits and beer and wine. Just want to make sure I understand the intent of,
Warren, can I interrupt? Can you pull your mic up a little bit and make sure it's on? There you go.
the better. As far as, so I see that it's got distilled spirits plus beer and wine essentially combined for the permit, for the alcohol permit. The question that I have is, if an individual is having a party, they hire a caterer. If there's distilled spirits, then the state kind of mandates a little bit further as far as the license, correct?
Well, the caterer would have to have the underlying permit. So like if a restaurant had the 3 permits, distilled spirits, beer and wine, they could serve all 3 when they're off premise doing catering. But if they didn't have one, like if they didn't have distilled spirits, when they're off premise, they're not supposed to serve distilled spirits. They don't have
Okay.
that primary permit.
Okay, and that was clear with a caterer. What if I was to have a graduation party? I pay for the alcohol as the resident, as the host of the party, but I hire a buddy of mine that's a bartender to actually serve.
Right, I mean, we added the private party exemption as long as it doesn't get to a special event, which I think special event technically is like 50 or more people. A special event permit would kick in and then we'd have to look, more closely at it, but we intended for any non-special event private party just to be completely exempted from the ordinance.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I want to make sure. Thank you.
Sure.
Brantley, you said, was that 15 or 50?
50, I'm sorry.
Sorry, thanks.
That's okay.
Anything else?
Good.
All right. Having heard none, I'll need a motion on number 7-6.
Motion to approve.
We have a Tracy second. Further discussion? Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4, 5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Moving down to item 8-1 is the Volta sign waiver. Dakota?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We could fast forward to my slides, please. Thank you, Jeff, and you can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so this is the sign waiver for Volta charging. The waiver request, the location of these signs for this waiver request, these are 2 freestanding structures in the Target Shopping Center that is over on Highway 92. The subject signs are about right in front of Bath and Body Works Target area that you can see on the map there. There are 4, like I said, 2 structures, 4 sign faces total, and these are already installed. I'll get into that a little bit on the next slide, but there was some reasoning that the applicant can explain. They did not feel that they needed a sign permit at first. They were under the impression that because it was a certain distance from the road that they did not need a permit. They were already installed. The signs were turned on and they were functioning, and then we have had them turned off since then. So they are currently off and not functioning now. If you'll go to the next slide, please, Jeff. Awesome. So these, this is a photo here of both of these structures. These are electric vehicle charging structures. The company is Volta for the electric vehicle charging structures. What Volta does is put these structures in and provide free charging to the vehicles, but they also have electronic signs displaying ads. It is the electronic signs that are in question here. In reference to the visibility from the road. That was not something that we really questioned here. The sign code, the section of the sign code that is in question is 6.4.8C. Again, this is in the electronic signs sections. And if you'll go to the underlined portion here, it says all other applications of electronic signs are prohibited. So the only electronic signs that we permit in the city are those that are on freestanding monument structures on Highway 92, properties with commercial, 200 feet of commercial frontage, and then they must be 200 feet apart from the next electronic sign. This is very specific and something that we have gone over time and time again and kept the same electronic sign code. And so with this, we felt that we needed to have them go through the sign waiver process, and that's what brings us here today. I will mention the size of these signs. The structure, one face of the structure is 19 square feet, and then the sign itself, each sign face is 9 square feet. All right, and Jeff, if you'll go to the next slide for me, please. I have just a few of the criteria questions outlined here. These are just some additional things that we use to make our recommendation. There are no other electronic signs in the area. The size would be compatible with other signs in the area, but again, there's no other electronic signage in the area. And another thing to mention on the electronic sign code, that code section does require the electronic portion of the entire sign to be at 20% or less of the overall sign. This is over that as well. So that's, if you will, another violation or something to be seeking a waiver from. Okay, and if you'll go to the next slide, Jeff. So that was a short and sweet presentation, really just outlining that one code section with electronic signs being prohibited in all other areas, all other forms of signage other than those monument structures fronting Highway 92 in the Parkway overlay. So with that, the DPC did recommend denial of the proposed signs. Planning Commission recommended the same for denial. One thing that I wanted to point out from the Planning Commission meeting, it was brought up by the applicant's representative that the signs could have been permitted, were permitted. That is not the case. There was a permit given, an electrical permit given. No sign permit or any other building permit was given for these signs, was ever sent in any structures, drawings, anything of the sign. It was just an electrical permit. And we do have Dwayne Hilton there, our building official at the chambers, and I believe he can go over some of those differences in the permits. Dwayne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I just wanted to speak quickly on regarding the comment about the permit. We issued a standalone electrical permit. We did not issue a building permit. We did not have any drawings to go by because this is a piece of equipment. There's nothing for us to inspect other than electrical. So we required them to pull an electrical permit. So the description on the electrical permit that was pulled, I'll just read it to you real quickly. The description of work says, install 2 electrical vehicle charging stations and all related electrical and civil activities. Painting and marking of electrical vehicle parking spaces and installation of necessary parking signs. Nothing about signage on the stations themselves. So I would just say that the argument that this should be looked at to be approved based on the electrical permit that we issued should not be a valid reason to approve these signs regardless of whether you decide to approve them or not. The fact that we issued a standalone electrical permit has nothing to do with the signs that they put on charging stations.
What date was that issued?
The electrical permit was issued on 4/8/19.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay.
Hey.
Dakota, anything?
Yes, I am done. And we have Parks Huff, who is representing the applicant. And then we have 3 people from the Volta company actually on with us. If we could unmute them either now or after Parks is finished. Their names are, let's see, Ben Foss, Victoria, Vox, and Ashley.
Sorry, it's Tiffany Fox is actually the person you should have made. Thank you.
All right,
Go ahead.
and I'm going to ask a little indulgence. I'm going to start out and then they're going to take over. I know this is going to be a little awkward. And let me just hit real front. The whole point about the sign permit is what I was trying to address is that we didn't just put them up in the middle of the night. Contractor came out and pulled electrical permits. That I was trying to make sure that everybody realized that they didn't just, do that, not even pull an electrical permit. And so that was the whole question. It wasn't trying to say that because we pull electrical permits, that everything. Contractor installed these things. Volta is a forward-thinking company. They install electrical charging stations. What's unique about them is the fact that you can fill up at their stations, electric stations, for free. And so they're a real benefit to not only the drivers, but the retailers, the shopping centers where these are located at. I want to make a real quick point before I ask Ben to step in is we're asking for a sign waiver for 2 signs or 2 charging stations with a pertinent signage that allow free charging in a commercial shopping center with no visibility to public rights. So in terms of distinguishing this from other things, is it going to result in other locations? We're offering a waiver for these 2 locations. They're installed. They provide services for the folks that shop there. And then this time I asked Ben to take over, and I think he's got a presentation. I think he does.
Thank you very much, Parks. Hello, my name is Ben Foss, and I believe I'm not on camera, so I'll just continue with that background. If we could roll down through the PDF to the next slide, which is the Volta material, and I'll give a little bit of background. Very briefly, my name is Ben Foss. I'm a vice president here at Volta Charging. We give away free electric vehicle charging to folks within any place where we install our stations. I'd like to also very briefly introduce Tiffany Fox and Ashley Rivet. Feel free to jump in, guys, and make a brief intro about your role here.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Fox. I'm the director of site sales for Volta in both Atlanta and Miami, and I had the opportunity to present on behalf of Volta to the council earlier this year.
Hello, this is Ashley Rivet. I am the Director of Site Development at Volta and work directly with the site partner site centers at this specific location.
And I'll highlight that we have put into the record a letter from site centers, which we'll come back to, in which they highlight that this is helping people go back to retail because the stations themselves bring people in. Basically, we're going to make 3 arguments today. The first is that this is a very targeted request. The second is that we're here to help with jobs and to get the economy back up and running. And the third is that we are able to help specifically with COVID by using these screens to help fire departments, which we have done in a number of communities already. I have up on the screen right now the Ford website. This is the Ford Mustang, which this year officially goes electric. There's a waiting list to get these. And we highlight that this is a big trend that is coming from Ford. GM is going to be bringing out the Hummer as an electric vehicle. And we are, in general, going to be seeing electric vehicles coming in a lot more numbers, which means you're going to need places to fuel them. If we could move on to the next slide. This is an image out front of an Albertsons. We have national agreements with folks like Target. Obviously, they're in the shopping center here, although it's with site centers. We have agreements with folks like Walgreens, Safeway, brands you've heard of, people you can trust. And in each of these cases, we do all of the installation, all the maintenance, and all of the permitting work, though I will highlight in this situation, we are in the wrong. We made a mistake at the beginning. In many communities, if you're not visible from the right of the way, you are not considered a sign, so we did not seek those permits. That was an error. We also made an error when one of our maintenance people turned the stations back on because they thought it was broken when the screen was off. We then unplugged it and put code up to make it so that screen will never go on until you tell us it's okay. Finally, I will note that we continued to fuel and have given away 25,000 miles of free driving with this station in the time through electricity that people are using to plug in, even though we're taking no revenue off it. And we kind of did that as a tax on ourselves. If we could continue to the next slide, please. This is a site map. I think we've covered it very carefully. You'll see that it's near the target though, and we highlight that in many cities, including I believe yours, essential businesses are a place where people go. And this is a good place to communicate, for example, with seniors and the like. And I'll talk about that in terms of how we can help with COVID in a moment. But for now, I think we'll keep moving to the next slide. Here you'll see the actual visual, and I want to underscore that the screen is quite small relative to what is surrounding it. This is not a massive display. The display itself is a static image, which is steady, and we use the National Highway Transportation Safety Board standard, which is 8 seconds, so that it does not become a distraction to drivers. Next slide, please. Sorry, I think that's going the wrong direction. These are some of the brands that we work with that I mentioned earlier. You'll know them, and I think you can see that we are a long-term partner and do trustworthy work. Please continue. We are in all of these cities across the United States, so we're building a national network, and we believe that electric vehicles are going to happen everywhere. And then within the Atlanta metro market, and this is a place where Tiffany might be able to speak to it because she's familiar with the larger market, we have stations throughout the market and are able to create a network where people will go from electric vehicle charging station to electric vehicle charging station in order to fuel. Tiffany, would you be able to speak briefly about the number of stations we have in the Atlanta market and what we anticipate in the next year to give a sense of the size of the network?
Sure. So as of this afternoon, we have about 40 stations in the ground in Atlanta currently, or the northern suburbs of Atlanta, if you will. And through the end of the year, right now, we have about 99 stations total that are signed. So you could call it an extra 54 that are in the construction pipeline, and about 34 more that we're looking to sign before the end of the year. So you could call it about 135 stations, if you will, in Atlanta, probably installed before June of next year.
And I would emphasize, thank you, Tiffany, I would emphasize that those stations are going in, and they are going in order to draw people to them. So communities that have free electric vehicle charging stations will be more likely to draw business back. And you're ahead of the game because they're in the ground. Obviously, we made a mistake, and we'd like to make that whole. The next slide, please. These are national brand partners who support us, brands you know, like Nissan or BMW. These are folks who are serious about supporting electric vehicles, as well as folks like Netflix. These are all people who have done national campaigns with us. So this is not a big issue. We also support local folks, and we went out and actually spoke with them. Ashley, maybe you could speak briefly to the letter and site centers and how much they value these.
Yeah, absolutely. So Site Centers has been a long-term partner of Volta. We have approximately 30 different sites through Site Centers across the country, and they did provide a letter recommending Volta and speaking to the value that we bring to the property. So as a free amenity, we attract new and additional customers and new EV drivers to come and spend their money at the retailers, some of which who are struggling in a COVID environment. So this is a great opportunity to attract more people and to increase spend at their centers.
And I would say specifically, we have third-party data from the Chicagoland market that shows there's an increase of 40% of shopping when people come in. So that could really bring retail jobs back. If someone sits there, they stay longer and go to Starbucks in addition to getting their nails done or whatever in order to spend more money locally. Tiffany, you also spoke with some retailers in the market and got specific feedback that we might be able to share?
Absolutely. Would you like me to share that now or save that?
Go right ahead, yeah.
So yeah, we reached out to some of the smaller, more local retailers in the center, and you know, they communicated that they were happy that the stations are there, and you know, may not have necessarily heard specific information from their clientele, but we're happy that they were there and looking forward to the stations continuing to be used. And we're also excited about the ability to from a media perspective, be able to utilize the space that's on the stations, whether that's you know, putting up specific promotions for a specific tenant at the site, advertising some of the new protocol that they have in place to make sure they're protecting their customers in the COVID environment, et cetera. In general, they are very excited about the stations and looked forward to them being even further utilized if we were able to get them on board in the manner that they should be.
Thank you. We have only a few more slides. We're almost done. If you could jump down to the next slide, please. I highlight here that we have a range of stations. And so as electric vehicles grow, they're expected to be roughly 20% of the cars sold in roughly 5 years. We have non-media stations that we could install, so we can do this in both ways, though for those people have to pay for them. And so that's the trade-off. Free involves a screen, not free involves no screen. Next one down. We also work with the local retailer in order to figure out the right mix of stations, and we can track through anonymous data where people are coming from and show you evidence that people are coming to shop from outside the community and bring dollars into the community. We do this very carefully and through anonymized data, but we can show that people are coming in who live in other parts of the state and are coming in to shop specifically because of the charging. People go out of their way for free. 2 more slides. The next one, please. This highlights the data about how much we have given away in charging. And then there's a brief 2-minute video that shows another community using it for COVID response. Dakota, you had said we'd be able to play this video. Is that something we can do?
Yes, we can see it full. Jeff, if you'll go to the next slide. And another one. I believe it's after this presentation. Yes, after this.
Is that a
Jeff,
URL?
they were going to see if you could click on this URL. If not, there is a backup documentation that they said have these quotes. They were just going to see if you could play this.
It looks like we might be having technical difficulty. If we are, we can do it without the video.
Great. Let's go ahead to the next slide, Jeff.
So this is the Volta response system. We designed this to support the community of Huntington Beach originally. We worked with Battalion Chief Eric McCoy there in order to establish the system, and it is content that is controlled by the city. We do this work for free because it is life-saving. We also will do work in relation to other life-saving matters like, say, a hurricane, or if there was a missing child, we can use the screens to help people locate it. If you scroll down, you'll see quotes from the first responders that we've worked with, including firefighter Eric Baskia. He talked about how from the first email with us, getting the signage on the stations and in front of difficult to reach populations was very simple. There, he's highlighting that seniors may not be on Instagram or Facebook, but they do go shop at Target. And so we can show them information about safety and health. We also have a quote from Commander Ben Horner from the police department in Union City out here, and he talks about how he structures 911 call centers as a professional, and that he believes this system is a great way to reach people and help deal with everything from active shooter to locating a missing child. So we're really trying to be of service and be part of the community here. And then I think with that, we'll wrap up our presentation and see if there's any questions from council.
And if I can just, I want to just say 2 quick things to kind of emphasize it. 25,000 free miles were given by these stations since they've been activated. That's significant. 40% increase in people's time at shopping centers when they're using these charging stations. That's significant. When we look at new technology, electric vehicles and charging is a new technology. Compare and contrast this to old technology. You are very familiar with the shopping centers that have chosen to pursue old technology. You can put a 8-bay gas filling station with a canopy in the parking lot, which looks very cluttered and everything. That's perfectly fine. These are sleek and modern, and they're serving a purpose for new technology, and that should be something that's embraced. So we ask that you approve these waivers for these signs, as you saw from the picture. I mean, they're unobtrusive, they're low, they've shown its success. It allows for people to charge for free gas. I mean, free mileage is important. You save on all the environmental aspects to it, and also your health of your retailers.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I have a question or two. What is the average duration of the 56 sessions a month that you get at this location?
So typically,
average duration of the sessions of charging at this location?
Certainly.
I
can tell you,
typically the average time that someone stays charging at that location.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Great, I can hear the question. Thank you. Our typical turnaround time on a station is about 90 minutes, which is enough time for people to go and shop and do their things. We adjust them according to the location. And Ashley, you could speak, for example, to movie theaters or other businesses where we adjust it and when we can use the app, which we actually skipped over, in order to monitor that remotely and encourage turnover for shopping. I will note that this station, we know from one of the local retailers, someone who owns a Tesla has been parking it there. And because we're not making money off the station, we haven't been fighting it. But Ashley, you could speak about how we tailor it to this specific environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a grocery environment, for example, about an hour and a half to 2 hours is most appropriate there, versus at a movie theater, as Ben alluded to, about a 3-hour mark is more appropriate. And as Ben mentioned, through our app, we're able to send notifications to our drivers to be able to not necessarily police, but encourage them to share the charge.
And do you have the stats for this location as opposed to just aggregate?
So we can generate those for you. I can tell you that we generated them in the aggregate. I would be able to get that data for you within 24 hours if you'd like, and we might be able to do it in the background right now.
Is the 56 sections a month this location or aggregate?
That is that location specifically, and it is low for our average because we haven't included it in the network because we don't consider it a live station today. So it's not on our app, so people aren't finding it without our promotion thereof. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, you answered it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a question for staff.
Okay, Dakota?
Dakota,
Yes.
at what point did you and your team notify the applicant that the signs were placed and not permitted?
This was in February. It was brought to our attention and I don't know that I have the exact date, but we notified them and they did shut off the electronic signs pretty immediately. I do want to say though that this is January or February prior to application.
And these signs were installed at what time?
This was 2019, April.
Okay, so it installed in April of 2019 and they operated until January.
May I
Chief
make a
Subas
comment?
and Chief Moss, can you all hear me?
I was going to offer a comment, sir.
If Chief Subas or Chief Moss, I'm curious if y'all have y'all been contacted by Volta with regards to cooperation on public safety programs?
Councilmember A, Chief Moss is not there. He's out with the down power line on 92.
Thanks, Jeff. Is Chief Subas there?
He may be there too. He was there earlier. He couldn't get on.
He said he was ready.
Sir, I can tell you we have not made contact with them because we don't consider these active stations yet, but we would incorporate them into the program this year if that was helpful.
I'm here, sir, and they have not contacted us.
And so I'm struggling to understand if y'all didn't realize they weren't supposed to be on until January and they were installed in April, and cooperation with public safety is such a big piece of what you do. How during that 9 months was public safety not involved?
We did not reach out to public safety pre-COVID. It was when COVID hit that we began doing public safety work because we realized this pandemic required extra effort. And once we did that, we understood the value could continue beyond COVID. So we've only had this program operational since roughly March of this year.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody else?
We got a question.
Warren?
The application is actually for electronic signs. But my question is the sign itself allowed by right? So do we need to have a variance for the sign itself? Because generally, we discuss sign variances all the time, and it's related to a retail owner wanting more signs, bigger signs, different lit signs, but
Yeah.
it almost seems like we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves talking about a electronic sign if the sign itself is not allowed by right.
I believe a certain amount of signage is allowed by right, but the electronic sign is not allowed. And you're usually talking to folks about wanting to be able to have signage that is viewed off-site. This is very different than any other sign you look at. This is for people who are on-site in the shopping center, and it's for people who, the only people who would see it are people who are on private property going to this shopping center. It is designed to benefit the shopping center, the retailers in the shopping center, and the people who shop at the shopping center, and the people who, your residents who have electric cars and now have free charging. What they provide is not just the sign. They provide an app. They provide the maintenance centers, and they do cost a lot of money to maintain. There's a certain amount of maintenance that goes along with them. So it's not just the sign and the charging station. It's this whole network. And even without that network being activated with their app, they've still given away 25,000 miles of free electric miles.
I
Parks,
understand that, but my concern is the concept I really like. The concern that I have is this is not a sign that is being requested by a retailer. It's essentially an electronic billboard, which then creates a whole lot of questions for me. And I'm a little bit nervous of opening Pandora's box as far as that goes.
Yeah, well,
Parks, may I make a comment?
From the shopping center owner that we're a partner with, that they like the sign.
But are they
Because
requesting?
it benefits their business and their retail. And I mean,
Parks.
right now, as every retailer is struggling, why would you not give any benefit to a retailer who is trying everything they can do to get people to come in and shop? And if by putting free electric charging stations in front that are innocuous, sleek, and modern, why wouldn't you do that? Why would you not do something to help businesses, help their citizens who get free electricity, free electricity, and if I could go back to the slide that shows the actual picture of the parking lot.
Parks, could I make a comment before you continue?
I mean, if you go to the Target parking lot, you will see these big displays where you put your buttons. Your buttons go here. You've got this big sign that says online orders come here. I mean, this sign is less innocuous than all that other stuff that you see in a parking lot for modern technology. And I think the city should embrace the modern technology that goes along with this type of technology. And it's a waiver for this only. That's what we're asking for. We're not asking to change the ordinance for the waiver for this situation only, and give it a chance and ask in 6 months to see what the numbers are when it's fully activated and part of the network, and see how long it's there.
But y'all had it as part of the network for 9 months. And during those 9 months, you had an average of 1 person per day per unit use it. That's what 56 a month comes down to. So if it was part of the network for, right? You have 2 units.
Are you able to hear me on the line?
Ben's here.
Yes, thank you. I would just comment briefly on two points that have come up. First, regarding the question of signage. In other cities, not your city, so obviously we want to conform to your guidelines, planners have pointed out that we actually lease the spot from site centers and we pay rent. And so we are operating a business to give away electric charging for free in exchange for that signage. So we fit into their code as a business that put a sign up, and I don't know the specifics of whether that would work here or not. I would also note that the low utilization you're seeing was from 18 months ago when these were, at the time, Tiffany, I would guess these were some of the first stations we had installed. And so there was less market awareness. So when we say an average station does about 30,000 miles a year, 30,000 miles a year, that is a good number, especially when you compare it to our competitors. For example, Electrify America, which is a national company, just released their California data, and they had 7 sessions per month. So if you look at the relative increase, this will go up dramatically as the cars like the Ford Mustang come to market. It's a question of cars. It's like VHS tapes and VHS players. There were no tapes, so the players weren't that useful. Now there are more tapes.
I drove a Nissan Leaf for 2 years. I love electric vehicles. I see them as like important and a big piece of the future. But the point here, I think, is that the arguments being made don't feel genuine to me. You can see it from Woodstock Square Avenue, which is a public road. The pitch of, oh, it's helping everybody because of the pandemic feels like an opportunistic pitch because y'all didn't follow the process to come seek these waivers beforehand. The shopping center knows there's requirements for signage. Target just did signage. They just did a big sign package, read all the signs and renovation that they did. That just came through last year too. So I struggle with it because I feel like it's this, oh, we're going to help with the economy. Well, what were you going to pitch before this all happened? These have been in for a year.
May I comment?
There was no attempt to follow the process.
May I attempt to comment, sir? I apologize, and you are correct that we made a mistake. We admit that up front. We are here to say, I was taught when I was growing up, when you make a mistake, admit it and try and make it right. And so from where we are today, if you were to give us a 6-month window to demonstrate to you that these stations are highly utilized, to demonstrate to you that we can work with your fire department and make it useful, and you had a member of the fire department, maybe the public information officer in the fire department, and you had residents saying these stations were working, that would be my test. We would then pay to rip them out, put the parking lot back, we'll put the landscaping back in, and we'll pay every penny to get it back to where it was. But if you would give us the opportunity to try and serve the community for 6 months, we think we could be helpful.
Any other questions, comments? David, you had something?
I mean, I look at them and I don't think they're obnoxious by any means, but then I see the ones we put in town that weren't maintained. I mean, if they're maintaining them and people are using them, then, I mean, I'd be willing to give them 6 months to see what would happen.
Brantley, is that even a possibility? I mean, I don't know if the code would allow something like that. I've never seen it before.
Donnie, I think you could give them a waiver if they consent to it in writing and agree with what the gentleman just said. Then I think there would be a stop from making any complaint once you required them to be removed.
There's your answer, right?
I mean, you can red tag us at any point and we got to go. You are in charge. We just follow what you tell us to do. From this point on, we made a mistake before and we're sorry.
And Eldon, this is Parks. My question is, if it is like a 6-month period of time, or would we do it 6 months and come back before mayor and council for another hearing?
That's what I think you need to do in order to answer council's questions. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and they could choose to deny it or extend it at that time. Is I think what I'm hearing.
Yes, but I do want a written consent that this only lasts for 6 months, and that if council votes in 6 months not to allow it to be extended, that they agree that they'll take them out.
And I would happily do that. And I'll tell you that we'll have it signed by 2 people, our general counsel, who was a partner at Ropes and Gray for many years, and by John Michaels, who is our head of operations. He's a Marine Corps helicopter pilot with 2 tours in Iraq. I think I can trust him.
If I can, would that include that after another hearing before mayor and council?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you have that process, that's all.
So after 6 months, if we determine that it's still not something that we want, are you going to replace it with a non-screen charging station, or are you going to pull the charging station completely?
Well, here's what we would do. By default, we would remove the equipment and return it to the state that Site Centers had it in. Ashley, I would point back to you and say, we might be able to make an exception and see what we could do. We'd have to work with Site Centers though, because we are under contract to them and it's their property. So we would assume we would pull them out because we can deploy those stations in other communities. Ashley, what is our agreement with Site Centers? And I assume we would be ripping it all out, right?
Yeah, that's correct. if the stations do not meet sign code, we would remove the stations. But as we mentioned earlier, we structured this as a lease. So Site Centers is collecting rent from us on a monthly basis. So it would be taking that rental revenue away from Site Centers, and installing stations without signage on them takes our ability to generate revenue away. So we probably wouldn't be able to install the same model, but it is something that we can discuss with Site Centers.
Though there would be a fee at that time to Site Centers, and then people would pay at the pump essentially when they go to charge. So it would be, no longer would it be increasing retail activity because people would be paying extra versus what they pay at home.
That's correct.
All right, any other questions?
My concern remains with the fact that this intents and purposes is a small billboard, and no matter how clear our ordinance is written, every time somebody wants to put a billboard, we get sued. I'm just very concerned of giving any leverage on future situations like that. The concept itself, I like. The charging stations, I know that electric is the future, but I'm very concerned about I'm not necessarily, well.
Could I make one additional offer, sir? We have worked with cities like Portland, cities like San Jose, cities like Downers Grove in Chicago, and other ones to help them construct a targeted adjustment to their sign code that allows stations to provide free charging, but still keep the Pandora's box of all the other signage opening up. And so we could share our experience and work with the planning team, Dakota. We would follow her lead or other members of your team and give you our best information about how to keep that from happening. In this instance, we believe it's only a waiver. So this is a targeted solution today, but we could help you create this economy. We think if it's true that Ford Motor Company and GM are bringing these cars to market, there's going to be a lot more need for charging. And this is without any taxpayer money, we're able to do this out of the private market. So we'd love to find a way to innovate and not use tax dollars to do this.
Anything else from council? Council, we're in discussion phase now.
I'd make a motion to deny. I think, I'll stop there and I'll discuss later.
Okay, we have a motion to deny. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a Warren second.
If I can, I think DPC and Planning Commission got it right. The criteria that we're supposed to use to judge this, ask whether or not the signs are visually compatible with the character. The answer is no. I think staff correctly evaluated that. I think Planning Commission correctly evaluated that. And the other question is, are they reasonably scaled to the size of the subject structure? There's others, but these two, they're negative on. It's not appropriately sized. Most of these, generally speaking, electronic signs have to be less than 20% of the entire structure, and they are more than that here by a fair amount. So I think they got it right. I think the criteria are clear, and it needs to be denied.
Got one more question if I could.
Sure.
If they were to work with Planning Commission and help draft an ordinance that is acceptable from a legal review that would allow this without opening Pandora's box, if it's denied today, would they be able to reapply after the change in the ordinance? Is that substantial enough change to open it?
With the new application or new ordinance, I would imagine so. Other than they want to weigh in on that, though, signs are fraught with all kinds of entanglements. But
right,
we can explore that.
Eldon, do you want to say anything about that?
I mean, if the ordinance was changed and they complied with the ordinance, then they would be able to make a new sign application under the new ordinance.
So I will note, we would have to stop fueling in that time because we're pretty far out over our skis as it is. We would still work with you on the ordinance, be supportive.
We're in council discussion phase. If they have any questions, they'll direct them to you, okay?
I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Now, this is a motion to deny. Ward 1?
Aye.
Ward 2?
Nay.
Ward 3?
Aye.
Ward 4?
Nay.
Ward 5? I didn't hear him.
Opposed.
Opposed?
He said opposed?
Opposed.
All right, Ward 6.
Aye.
All right, I lost count.
3-3.
3-3? All right. I will make a motion, I'm sorry, not make a motion. I'll make my vote to deny. So the motion
The motion to deny carries. Are you opposing the motion or are you?
I'm trying to support your motion.
Okay.
I think I said it wrong. Did I?
It's 4-3.
It's 4-3 to deny. Is that
Correct.
correct? Did I say that
I
right? Mr.
understand your vote correct. Then I think so.
Eldon, did I say it right?
You're muted.
Council vote is 4-3 to deny the request for the waiver.
Correct. Thank you. All right, moving on. Item 8-2 is the public hearing and vote on case Z 130-19 Sharp Condition Amendment. Brantley, from now on, it's his show.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Actually, on this
Grant?
particular item, I was going to ask.
Mayor, can I stop you for just a second?
Unfortunately, we did advertise the public hearing, but this case goes back to, I believe, February or March. It's hard to keep up at this point, but we're working through some particulars with the parties in the field on resolving the zoning condition. And so I would just ask that the item be tabled. We're actually looking at September 14th, if at all possible. And I will report back to you and hopefully between now and then on our progress. And, you know, I'd like to think we're making headway. So we've been working on it. We're just not there yet.
All right, we have a request to table till September 14th, did you say?
Yes, sir.
Public.
Eldon, did you have a comment
Yeah,
about
it's
this?
still a public hearing, so we're gonna do that, but just stating for the record.
I did have a comment. I just wanted to remind council and inform those who have not previously known it that our firm has represented the applicant and the city, obviously. And we're not involved in representing them now on this case, but we represent them on other matters. I want to disclose that.
So noted. All right, this is an advertised public hearing, so I'd like to open up that portion. Is anyone in the audience here to speak? Rhonda, did you get any requests? Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
The
Absolutely.
next item on the agenda from my agenda was the Sharp Condition Amendment, and we've got the slides up for A10420. So I just want to make sure we're tabling the right thing here.
Yes.
That Warren, or that Eldon commented on the right case.
Yes, Sharp is the case I was talking about.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
That's okay. Point of clarification. All right, I'll entertain a motion to table.
You have a motion to table item 8-2.
I'll second it.
All right, Rob, motion, and Tracy, second. Further discussion? Ward 1?
Aye.
2?
Aye.
3?
Aye.
4?
Aye.
5?
Aye.
6?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Going down to the next one, it's 8-3, public hearing and vote on A 104-20, 3193 Trickham Road, city annexation rezoning, Brantley.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. You recall back in 2019, this property was purchased on Trickham Road, half an acre, and it was part of an overall property acquisition out there near the park. And it's just, this has been kind of a housekeeping measure for a while. As you can see, we brought it to the Planning Commission back in March, on March 5th. They did recommend at that time to rezone it from R40 in the county to open space OS in the city upon annexation. And so we just recommend approval as well. And move forward to annex it in.
Any questions for Brantley? All right, if none, I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone in the audience signed up? Nope. Rhonda, no requests? All right, we'll close the public hearing and open up for discussion and/or motions.
Motion.
Motion to approve. the
Second.
application.
We have a Tracy motion and a David second. Further discussion? This is first reading. Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 8-5 is a public hearing and vote on A 107-20 BJAS and Lewis LLC rezoning. Brantley.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Council. We have before you tonight, and could you scroll down just a little, please? Might have to zoom in a little bit on this one. In Ward 3, DBA Culvers, the applicant is, and Mr. Bill Lewis is the franchisee here tonight, represented by Adam Rosen. This is the Stellan Crow property on the corner of northwest corner of Highway 92 and East Road. 1.78 acres, 11,797, 11,799, Highway 92. Tax parcels indicated on the slide. The property is zoned general commercial in Cherokee County right now. We're recommending to zone to general commercial in the city of Woodstock. As indicated here, the applicant is currently building a Culver's restaurant in Cherokee County, or he's currently in plan review, site plan review with Cherokee County, or he was when we met him. And he's actually going to be on city water and sewer. And we're also working with him on a driveway permit for Nice Road. And so through that conversation, he's working with us on now annexing into the city, and he's been in site plan review with the city since July, and he's in the second one right now. So we're making progress and working toward a land disturbance permit for the project. The building plans have also been reviewed by Dwayne, and so comments right on those right now. We're really trying to work with him since he's been in the pipeline and been pursuing this project for quite some time. Been in plan review, I think it's safe to say, since May, to help him meet his construction timeline and delivery timeline, and the applicant can certainly discuss that in more detail. We are recommending general commercial with conditions that have been recommended by both DPC and DPC and Planning Commission, and also we've gone over them with our legal team, and I'll go over the changes that our legal team had in just a moment. Scroll down, please. So everybody, I think, is familiar with this site. In the past, a senior living facility has been proposed on the neighboring parcel, and it's right across from the church. So this is a pretty critical area, I think, in our annexation strategy with regard to sealing in or filling in unincorporated pockets. Scroll down, please. And because this project is already underway, has been underway, and there's a known site related to it, we're really recommending the zoning be approved around the site that they're choosing to build. That really makes it kind of a known entity, and we understand kind of what they plan to accomplish with that. And next slide, please. And to that end, we did look back at the annexation policy and the council policy manual. We feel like it meets many of the criteria that you've set forth for priority when it comes to annexation. I mentioned the unincorporated islands. This is in our service delivery area. I mentioned water and sewer. They will be on our water and sewer with the city. We're working with them on that right now. And of course, expansion opportunities. You know, it's not often we get to work with a commercial entity who's actually underway and in progress and get them to come into the city. And we've had a really good working relationship with Mr. Lewis, even though we've only known him a short time. And so we look forward to him joining the city, hopefully, and being a great corporate citizen for many years to come. And additionally, the plan is, or the project is consistent with our comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. And if you recall, these criteria, or these decision factors, I should say, are aligned, within the annexation policy and kind of give a framework for some of the decision-making that you may look at, or you may go into when making a decision. So we feel like highlighted in yellow here that the project meets many of these decision factors and, would definitely be a positive addition. Next slide. And so in looking at the kind of site plan, the applicant, as I said, has been pursuing the project. He has certain characteristics he's trying to achieve with the project and construct. And so in working with him, we've included those in the packet as well. I've already mentioned the site plan. Next slide, please. With this, he's also got proposed elevations. These elevations are actually very similar to the store that was built out on Highway 92 at I-75. If you've seen it lately, it's, I would say, identical to it from what I can tell. And so we wanted to make sure that we brought that into the zoning as well to ensure that he could build the store that he intended to build in Cherokee County, that he could build it in the city. Next slide, please. And these are just a series of, just a series of slides for the architecture. He's also included a sign package with the proposal. Oftentimes, as you know, we receive a sign package with a new project to make sure that signage can be installed according to what the applicant's seeking, which a lot of times is a national brand that they're trying to meet. And so Culver's is no different. He's actually included every sign that he plans to install in this plan, although not every sign necessarily needs a permit. Today, we're really focusing on the wall signs and the street signs, or the freestanding signs. Next slide. Scroll up just a little. There we go. So on the building signs, he's included those building signs. Those building signs are compliant with the city's code. So even though they would be entitled by the city's code if he were to permit them separately, we've included them obviously with the package with all of the signs. Next slide. He's also got 2 freestanding signs. These freestanding signs, as you know, he's on a corner. So on a corner, double frontage, the businesses are allowed to have more than one freestanding sign. He's also included electronic components to both signs, which he is compliant with the Highway 92 overlay, which, as you know, Highway 92 overlay allows electronic signs 200 feet apart. I've got Dakota actually on the line too. She did a really thorough review for us on this. The one thing about it is the first sign is the larger sign, which will actually be on Highway 92, and it is around 152 square feet, including the base and all of the copy area. The other sign on the next slide, scroll down just a little, there we go, is about 105 square feet. And so typically on a single user, the max square footage on everything is 80. And so in the county, it was 120, but the county has approved a new overlay on Highway 92, which I think actually takes it down to 50 or something like that. So absent their overlay, it probably would have been close to compliant with their request. Obviously, we're trying to work with them through the zoning process instead of them perhaps pursuing the variance process with the county. So I know the other location, and they can speak to this, had some variances. And so we're trying to look at it that way as well. What variances might they need? Could we include that in the zoning process? So these signs are a little bit larger than what we would normally see. But as I said earlier, with the sign package process, a lot of times we have companies that come in that want to do a little something different with their brand. I think of Kia, the Outlet Mall, some of the other businesses we've seen, Costco, that have had different requests. And so that's kind of how we looked at it to include it. Sometimes they're able to include a sign package with their proposal. Sometimes they're not. So in this case, they were able to do that because they're moving toward construction. Next slide, please. So these are our conditions, and I included these conditions in the packet. Could you zoom in just a little bit? If you're able to. Sorry to be so demanding. So these are the recommended conditions that we've recommended to the Planning Commission. We've also had a few changes kind of in the process through Planning Commission, because we went to Planning Commission on August 6th. Today's August 10th. This case has been moving very quickly because we're working toward trying to accommodate project delivery. So there have been some edits through the process. The Parkway overlay condition number 1, the way I kind of see this is we're getting what I think is the very best out of the Parkway overlay. We know that the site, we know how the site will be designed. And so to approve the site plan, site specific, really presents an opportunity not necessarily have to improve the entire overlay onto the site, as long as we include, I think, the parts of the overlay that are going to be the most important, which for this particular case are going to be the front yard area, which does include the fence. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there, as well as the electronic sign requirement. So those are some things that have been included in the site plan. The front yard on Highway 92 is what folks are accustomed to seeing. So we wanted to make sure that we included that. On the site plans, on condition number 2, we've basically included it. You're used to seeing this type of condition with the substantial compliance with the site plan. A lot of times it's a concept. In this case, it's an actual site plan, an engineered plan that'll actually be issued an LDP. So it's a very thorough plan. The architectural plans I mentioned earlier, we're attaching those as Exhibit D. We've also been working with the fire department, and I believe they're on the call right now, through some challenges that we have between the Cherokee County Fire Code and the City of Woodstock Fire Code. Where certainly both fire codes follow the NFPA code with Georgia amendments. City of Woodstock currently has a lower threshold for sprinkling commercial buildings at 3,500 square feet. And so at this building at over 4,000 square feet, they would be required to do that. And so we've been working with the fire department en route really to an amendment to the code to be able to accommodate this user so that they'll be able to construct it in parity with what they would have been able to do in the county, working with the city, and still comply with the fire code that both jurisdictions follow, just not that lower threshold sprinkler requirement that we have, and specifically in our code. And we're talking about specifically for commercial buildings, 3,500 square feet or at 3,500 square feet. We've also included a parking condition to accommodate the amount of parking that they've requested on the site. The applicant will want to speak to that. They spoke to the Planning Commission about the need for 65 spaces. The buffers, they'd included some buffers from the county's code. The neighboring property I mentioned has been zoned for senior living in the past, and actually it's in the process right now. At some point we'll be before you with a new senior development project. And so in light of the fact that the property, has been in play, will be in play again, there's no directly adjacent single family residential units like a platted subdivision to the site. We've recommended there not be any buffers and be included in it at this time. And there again, we go back to the specific site plan that's recommended that includes landscaped areas, but just not the large undisturbed buffers that we've seen in the past on parts of Highway 92. On condition number 6, Denise Road driveway, Janice is actually on the call today or at the meeting today. We worked together on this. On the site plan, the applicant is showing a full access drive on Denise Road. And as you know, we're working with Georgia DOT on a project in that area in the intersection with 92 and Nice Road. And even despite that, there are challenges with having a full access drive that close to Highway 92. So we are recommending that be a right in, right out only. Although we have been facilitating with the neighboring property owner to try to get a driveway moved further up Nice Road that would accommodate Culver's with a full access drive. So despite the fact that we can't approve a full access drive here, we're going to continue to work to see if we can't broker or facilitate agreement among the parties to accommodate them moving forward. But in the short run, we did have to go ahead and make that decision, which was part of our plan review. And then we've also included the sign package. We've also included condition 8, a non-conforming status, which we've done in the past with projects where we're going to be acquiring right of way a lot of times right-of-way is acquired, then all of a sudden that right-of-way line moves closer to the building and the setbacks could be affected by that. So we don't want to inadvertently make the project a non-conforming use. And then finally, on the right-of-way conveyance, we have included here right-of-way conveyance to the city or willingness to donate the right-of-way and driveway and construction easements along Nice Road for a future project. That acquisition would occur with the project. We're just providing the opportunity kind of to begin the conversation. And the applicant has fortunately included that in their plan as well with regard to the right-of-way that'll be required on Nice Road for future project. So next slide, please. I think that might be, that's my last one. This is where Adam Rosen will pick up. That's the staff presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have of staff at this point about the project with regard to what we've recommended.
Frankly, I have a question. As you might imagine, it's about electronic signs. So do we have other electronic signs that are non-fronting 92?
That are not fronting 92?
Chirkham Road. No?
McDonald's.
I mean, under our current electronic sign ordinance, I know there's been a couple of waivers in the past. But under the current sign ordinance, I'm trying to grapple with the fact that I feel like on Highway 92, it's very clear, like commercially zoned property fronting Highway 92 within the Parkway Overlay District, eligible for electronic signs. I get that. The next phrase of electronic signs must be on a property lot with 200 feet of road frontage and cannot be within 200 feet of another sign. I understand it just looks like it's allowed potentially that there's another sign on that same property fronting Nice Road. The character area on 92 feels dramatically different to me than the character area on Nice Road. And I understand it's a piece of property that straddles both of them, but one is a bunch of neighborhoods pulling off of it, and the other is a very, high traffic commercial corridor. Have we seen signs like this off of 92 before?
I think McDonald's has them, right?
The one closer to the interstate?
And both of them do. I thought. One by the interstate, I'm pretty sure has.
I think all the McDonald's signs are changing to electronic.
Say that again, Rob. I couldn't
Rob, we couldn't hear you.
I believe that all the McDonald's menu signs are changing to electronic. When they came before us asking for that one on a while back, we saw it change in Town Lake. We saw it change at some of the other ones. I think it's
we tweaked the code though for that.
Right. But the question was McDonald's. I think that they are all going that route.
I think that's just relating to the menu board signs though, but not monument.
Right.
structure.
It's not Is the sign on Nice Road compliant with the 20% thing?
It is 20%, but remember, it's a little bit larger sign than we normally see, but it is compliant with 20%. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
The, no buffers are required. Is that because it's zoned similar adjacent properties?
Well, presently, the adjacent property, I believe, is R1. The one just immediately to the north is general commercial. But frankly, with the other property having been two prior times, pursued for commercial multifamily, it's in the pipeline today. There just ends up being a lot of wasted space with the buffers, and it makes a lot of sense when there's a platted subdivision next door, but an R1 would be a half acre lot. So at some point, I think that's going to rezone to something more dense because building on building on a half acre lot in that location is probably not viable, I don't think. So we see a lot of these buffers go in and it's wasted space. It makes no sense, If it was against the platted subdivision, it might make some sense, but the property's going to develop eventually commercial or something, commercial multifamily, if council approves or something like that. It's just, there's already so, the site is already so tight and awkward that when you see these buffers come in, it just begins to really start to work against the project. And this is, in my professional opinion as well, I'm just, making that recommendation to you to consider.
Okay. So the R1 is currently, as far as we know, planned for multifamily senior living.
Yes, sir. There's a company that's pursuing that right now. I think they'll be before you in September. Of course, obviously not approved, would have to be approved by council. So not done yet, but certainly in process.
15 years ago, that was the piece of property we wrote the senior living ordinance for. Oh, boy. Anybody else for Brantley? No? We'll hear the applicant's representative.
Adam Rosen.
Thank you, Brantley. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening, Adam Rosen, on behalf of your applicant in this application for rezoning and annexation. We're happy to be here tonight for this Culver's proposed restaurant, and we appreciate all that Brantley has done to, I think, recap kind of where this application has already been. A lot of the things that we would want to present to you about why the annexation is appropriate and why the proposed use and the rezoning is appropriate. Of course, he touched on the year categories that you would look at for annexation purposes. I think, looking at the property visually, you can tell that it's appropriate based on being that one last piece left that's in the county to be included in the city, but also going through the more specific criteria that your staff has done to look at the appropriate nature of it, I think is important as well. From a zoning perspective, we're asking to zone to the same zoning category it is in Cherokee County. And as you've heard, a lot of the aspects of that ordinance are very similar to yours at general commercial. So a lot of that is equivalent, which makes it more appropriate. We've also heard this from the nearby subdivision that would be on the other side of this property and the potential senior living property west and north of us, in agreement with the proposed use being appropriate. And so all of that put together, I think that covers the annexation and the request as far as the zoning is concerned. What I want to do is talk to you a little bit more about who Culver's is, who your proposed franchisee is. Mr. Lewis is here with us tonight, and give you a little bit of that story, which I thought was impactful to look at when I went through who Culver's was, not being extremely familiar with them to start with, but having eaten there this weekend and seeing Mr. Lewis's family on the wall in the restaurant and the pride that they have. I think that's important for the overall package here. And then talk to you a little bit about our site plan and some of the specifics that Brantley mentioned as well. If we can go down to the next slide. So if you're not familiar with Culver's, this is originally a franchise business founded in Wisconsin in the 80s. We now have 18 locations in Georgia now, so it's becoming something that you're more familiar with, and of course locations in Cherokee County as well that you may also be familiar with. Next slide, please. One of the things that I mentioned at the Planning Commission that I thought was impactful by looking at the Culver's information when this was worked on as a presentation to you, and I won't go through all the verbiage of this, but just the overall theme and the focus that Culver's obviously takes in the way that they focus on their values, and that's in their literature, and that's in what you see here. Next slide, please. Strong emphasis on the values, again, is in everything that they've talked about as far as how their operations will function and the overall brand that they want to see. It's an owner-operator model, so they ensure that that takes place. You're going to see, like I saw in Cobb County on Highway 41, you're going to see Mr. Lewis proudly owned verbiage on the restaurant, signage on the inside, and all of that, to know that Mr. Lewis is the one that's there, not a manager that's left to handle the operations. It's a different model that they're proud of and that has been successful in the past. Next slide, please. Again, the focus on the values, I won't go through all of those again, but I think that is reflected in the operations that you've seen in Culver's as it's grown here in Georgia. Next slide, please. The menu, if you know Culver's at all, you know their core items that you see here, the butter burgers and custard, and all of this being cooked to order items. Of course, a number of other items. One thing I did hear when I was in there was a number of folks ordering broccoli, and reminded me of the dinner entree items that they have as well. So it's a different concept than you may be entirely used to with a fast casual that this is classified as. Next slide, please. So before I go into the architecture, sign package, site plan, your applicant has a long history on an international level in development and engineering with an international paper company, and is now bringing that to his business with Culver's, and has done that successfully at the Cobb County location. And you can see each step through the process that we've been through, that experience that he's had being part of his decision-making in this case. Again, showing you the exterior architecture that Brantley has already given you a little bit of. This is from the sign package. And go to the next slide, please. But I wanted you to be able to see the stacked stone architecture, the masonry product, and this is consistent with the Cherokee County locations and the others that you'll see, and it's really consistent across the national brand. Next slide, please. Some of the sign package excerpts I pulled out. I thought this was neat to see the personalization for Woodstock being proposed with the sign package. Next slide, please. And then this is again showing you an example of the right-of-way signage of Culver's branding, and again showing you the stacked stone and the high-quality architecture and construction that's a part of their building and sign package architecture. And next slide, please. Give you a little bit more of the building architecture itself. All four of these examples are important because they're showing you what the focus is of Culver's. In this case, you see the patio seating. That's a part of all of these locations. One thing that you'll hear Mr. Lewis talk about is the difference in the overall dining time at a Culver's versus another fast casual. There's a focus on in-room dining, patio dining. That's something that's been emphasized for our site plan as well, with a larger patio than what's normally provided for. And that's something that he's seen, particularly related to the operations during the time with COVID concerns. More folks are coming to the restaurant and eating outside. So he's tailoring to that with this location as well. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question about that last slide? I'm just curious. At the top there, it says, the previous slide, it says pressure washing system, yes, no. It's got no highlight. What is the pressure washing system for something like this?
Pressure washing system.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I've not seen.
I elected not to put it in. I could have it built into the restaurant and then they would, excuse me, I'm sorry. I elected not, I don't put them in, but we have an option to put them in. Okay, from the standpoint, then we pipe it in through the pipes and just hook it up. Cool. So we have to, power wash the patio and we walk in and out as people spill things. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I was just curious. I hadn't seen that on restaurant slides before.
You're seeing the inside details here. And then the second one again shows you the exterior architecture and some of those examples, just so you can get a flavor of what that character is. Next slide, please. Our site plan, in this case, we're fortunate to have kind of a lot of things coming together at once that I think are working positively for this project, for the proposed senior living next door, and then for the neighborhood that is adjoining both of us, or adjoining our neighbor, one removed from us. But we have a Highway 92 Georgia Department of Transportation project that's in the design phase and is hopefully soon to come. So we've worked within the parameters of that project when we designed this site plan, and we think that that is helpful for both us and the neighbors in the area as that moves forward and as this development moves forward, and the potential changes that you'll see at this intersection. Like was mentioned, as far as Nice Road and its commercial nature now, being much different once the project moves through as far as the Georgia Department of Transportation and other commercial development. Our southern entrance on Highway 92 has already been through the review phase with Georgia Department of Transportation, so we know the aspects of that entrance. And as far as its approval, that's kind of along the lines of what Brantley mentioned as far as how far we've gone in the process to fully engineer our site plan and to know that we can present this to you and know that it's a project that will move forward specific to what we've proposed and that it is viable in that phase. The patio I mentioned, of course, you can see here as far as the overall scope of it in comparison to the restaurant. So the emphasis on the dining at the restaurant as opposed to drive-through. We're showing you in the drive-through fully stacked to show you the capacity of it. But again, that's not mostly the emphasis of the way Culver's sees their business. And that's why we have the additional parking spaces on our site to accommodate that. When you talk about the concerns related to parking, your ordinance is good to avoid the negative impacts of a large sea of parking, something that's going to become unsightly later. We don't have that here on this site, we don't believe, as far as the layout of it and the way that it's oriented to meet this, corner awkward piece of property that we're developing on, but does accommodate the parking needs of what we see as far as our operations. And again, that goes back to having some history and experience with this franchise before. Next slide, please. We talked some about, or Brantley talked some about the buffering. I think this landscape plan is just impressive to see the attention to detail of the landscaping, the investment in landscaping, wrapping the perimeter of the site. As Brantley mentioned, the landscaping on the right-of-way, meeting your overlay requirements, and the buffering that would otherwise potentially be on this site is, you can see the northwest portion of our plan, that detention area that will be undisturbed area, and then all of that being wrapped in the landscaping alongside of it. So I think that covers any of the concerns that would otherwise be a part of that requirement. As far as the signage is concerned on both Nice Road and Highway 92, and one thing that we look at is the ability for Culver's to be able to be recognized in its location. Once the Highway 92 project moves through, we're going to have a divided highway with the need to make a decision. As you approach Nice Road, you're going to have a right in, right out. And then the same for Highway 92. So we've got to have the ability for this location to be visible for decisions to be made. Plus, we're working with what has been a successful nationally branded package overall that we've worked to meet the ordinance for the city as well. We've worked with staff throughout this process, as Brantley mentioned, almost daily at times. They've been great to help us work through the process, and we will continue to do that. We've met on site with our adjoining residential neighbors to discuss the project with them. We've been on a Zoom call with them and gone through that part of the process with our neighbors, and we look forward to being a partner with them and the city moving forward. We've worked with our potential neighbor, the Drever project, the senior living adjoining us, so that we know that we'll have a common boundary that's appropriate for both of us, and to work on entrances and work on engineering that all works together, because our sites do overlap and do have access together. So we're excited about all of that. We think it all works well together. Mr. Lewis and I are here to answer any questions if you have any. I think our engineer, Jeff Carter, is on the Zoom call as well. So thank you for your time and look forward to your discussion.
Any questions for the applicant? You want to say something, Brantley?
I wanted to clarify a couple of things. I've researched a couple items since I was before you just a minute ago. Wanted to clarify on the sign. So the county would allow electronic sign on Nice Road, and our code actually allows them as well. If you recall, the 92 overlay is 1,000 feet from the center line. So we think about the 92 overlays being the frontage, but it's really a lot of property that's also not fronting it. So in the way that it's written is if you're on a corner and you have double frontage, as long as they're 200 feet apart, we believe these can be 200 feet apart, then it would be possible to have one on East Road as well, even under our code. Albeit they're larger than we normally would permit, but it is possible. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
And I think you're right. I think our code it would allow a sign on that second frontage as it's written now. The size, I mean, whatever.
All right. David, you have something? David, are you having
No,
anything?
fine. I
Okay.
was reading something. I'm good.
Okay, you look like you wanted to say
Nope.
something.
No, no.
All right, this is a public hearing. We'll open up that portion of the agenda. Rhonda? You want to speak? State your name, please.
For the record, my name is Parks Huff with Sam's Larkin Huff, and I represent the property owner that's adjacent, and just confirming what has been said. And we have been in the zoning process, kind of tracking them as we go through the process. We've got a development proposal. We'll be sharing an access point off of 92, got sewer, stormwater issues. We both last week walked the neighborhood that surrounds this property, and good dialogue with the homeowners association. And they're both very supportive of the projects combined and how we're working together. So I just wanted to confirm that we are working with them and they're working with us. And we're both working with them. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? And we'll close the public hearing and open up for discussion and or motions.
I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendations.
I'll
We have-
second.
Is that a David?
Yep.
Okay, David second. Any further discussion? Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5? You said aye? Yes. 6?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Looking forward to eating there. All right. An accompanying item, agenda item is 8-6, and it's public hearing first reading on A 107-20 BJAS and Lewis annexation and charter amendment. Go ahead.
Add, Mayor, just the public hearing for the annexation, as you said.
Okay. All right. We'll open up the public hearing portion. Rhonda?
I would say just for the applicant that we incorporate our presentation and request for the zoning request to these annexation requests.
Okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing and open up for discussion and motions.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a Tracy motion and a David second. Any further discussion? Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5, 6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 8-7 is public hearing first reading on ordinance amending chapters 7, 10, and 11 of the Land Development Ordinance to provide revisions, updates, and provisions for the reversion of amendments. Mr. Collins.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'll be proposing an amendment to chapters 10 and 11 of the Land Development Ordinance. As I came in front of you guys earlier, I kind of gave you just a review, and basically what we're proposing to do is reorganize chapters 10 and 11 to make them flow better with the process from the beginning to the end of obtaining an amendment. We're also focusing chapter 10 more on administration and focusing chapter 11 more on the process and procedures. We're proposing to keep the current variances section, or excuse me, keep it consistent, the expiration of 18 months with the variances that's already currently in the land development ordinance. We just wanted to expand that to the other amendment types. And with this proposal, it gives City Council the option to, we're proposing to give the City Council the option to extend the deadline for the amendments with a written request if the projects are coming up on the expiration date. Next slide, please. We're proposing to combine the two current subsections in chapters. In chapter 10, the officers quorum and voting procedures, because there were two sections titled, both titles powers and duties. And so we were trying to reduce the repetitiveness and put everything in one place. Under section 10.140, the Development Process Committee, it did not include the review of conditional use permits and waiver requests as a powering duty. However, Planning Commission, or excuse me, Development Process Committee already reviews these, so we are just proposing to include it in the ordinance. We are also proposing to keep the appeal section in chapter 10 because we believe that pertains more to the administration and enforcement instead of the process. We are also proposing to move everything from Article 2, except for the appeals, to Chapter 11 from Chapter 10. Chapter 3 then just got renumbered to Article 2. Next slide, please. In Chapter 11, we're proposing to, or everything in the proposed Chapter 11.2 to 11.209 was taken from the current Article 2 in Chapter 10. We believe that these sections fit better in Chapter 11 because they're about the process of obtaining the amendment, as well as instead of more information about the procedure. We are proposing to move the section discussing the campaign disclosure from the end of Chapter 11 to the section titled Zoning Amendments Initiated by Property Owners. And we are also proposing to move the variance section from Chapter 10 to Chapter 11, as it is more along the lines of procedures and not administration. We're proposing to move the section 10.161 amendments that it talks about the amount of time that an applicant must wait to reinitiate the request if it is denied by City Council, and how many times an applicant is allowed to apply for the same amendment on the same parcel of land. We're proposing to move that to official action at the end of section 11.217. Next, we're proposing to, change the sections 11.213 that talks about the public notice signs. We're proposing to make changes to that to make the city's public notice sign policy more consistent with state law requirements. In the purpose and intent of the proposed Chapter 11, we wanted to broadly lay out the steps of obtaining the amendment to give a brief timeline before diving into the details. We also added a few definitions such as project, commenced, and substantial progress. Next, we're proposing to start the bulk of the details with beginning with the opportunity for the applicant to provide a project schedule to the city to ensure transparency with the delivery time. And if the applicant does not choose to provide a schedule, then the default expiration would be 18 months from the date of approval. And once the project is commenced or the applicant is given a land disturbance permit, the applicant would have 12 months to reach substantial progress or become vested, or else the amendment could expire. If the amendment expires, the community development director or designee thereof would file a request to the Planning Commission to revert the amendment and make the recommendation to City Council. The request for reversion would be made after a written notice is sent to the applicant, making them aware of the reversion process and their reinstatement options. The applicant would then make a request for an extension of time, but the request must be written to the Community Development Department. And I know this says 15 days, but we had heard back from Eldon from legal review, and we are changing that to 30 days prior to the expiration date. And that can either be accepted, denied, or modified up to city, or sole discretion of city council. If an amendment is approved with the condition for the applicant to convey right of way to the city, it must be done within 90 days of approval, or else it would cause an immediate reversion. However, the city council can determine when the right of way must be conveyed on a case-to-case basis. And when talking about conditional use permits, we're proposing that approved conditional use permits should expire in 12 months from the date of approval for one of two reasons. If construction is needed and a building must be built, we're proposing that the applicant should have 12 months from approval to obtain that building permit, or else the conditional use permit would expire. Or if there's no building necessary, then the applicant must establish operations and they obtain their occupational tax certificate from the city within those 12 months. And both of those could be extended with the written request process. We are also proposing that conditional use permits expire 12 months in order to keep it consistent with the expiration time of approved site plans as well as land disturbance permits. We're proposing to move this section that's currently in the current section is 7.9 to the end of chapter 11, because it talks about non-conforming uses and conditional use permit expiration. And we wanted to put everything in the same spot to make it easier for everybody to find the information. We are also proposing to reference this article, Article 3, in the senior living section of chapter 8, because we wanted the senior living to follow the same process and procedures as the proposed Article 3. This is a very generic timeline of a project. And so from the date of approval, the applicant would have 18 months to receive or to get their land disturbance permit. And from that date, the applicant would then have 12 months to either become vested in the project, which would, in definition, we wrote as 50% of the total project cost, or to reach substantial progress or complete. Next slide, please. And so brief review of what we're proposing would be for the main goal for the applicant to provide the city a schedule to prevent us having to chase applicants down to ensure that the project would be delivered, or when, or what the progress is. And it'll also keep everybody on the same page. Also, if the applicant does not provide a schedule, the default expiration would be 18 months. And the extension would, the request for an extension is solely up to city council. Next slide, please. And this has been legally reviewed. And any questions?
Anybody?
Good work.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot of work.
It's been legally reviewed, but it's my understanding
think
that
you're on
we're
mute.
going to table this to the next meeting so that we could get it in final form, because there's been a lot of changes going back and forth. And I just got the last draft this afternoon.
What was the action you were requesting there, Eldon?
It's my understanding that they would agree to table this because we've been going back and forth with the language changes. And the last draft I just got this afternoon, I haven't had a chance to read it to see if it does what I had requested. And so the first reading won't be much because we'll have to have a second and third anyway. So I would suggest just tabling it.
Did he say table?
You did.
Okay. All right. Brantley, you okay with that? You did a good job. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, I will say that the concepts that he's described to you are describing exactly what they're trying to do.
Okay. But this is a public hearing, and I'd like to open up that portion Rhonda, anything? Nope. All right, we'll close the public hearing and open up for a motion to table.
Make a motion to table for the next meeting.
Second.
And Warren second. Any further discussion? Ward 1?
Aye.
2?
Aye.
3?
Aye.
4? 5? Anybody here?
Aye.
6?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Paris.
Thank you.
8-8 is public hearing and adoption resolution of the 2020 millage rate. Mr. Ron, are you on?
I'm on.
There you are.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. To give you a quick recap, your 2020 gross tax digest was up 8.75% for 2019. Of that increase, 3.72% was due to continued new construction in Woodstock, for a total of $64.6 million in new building and development. Tonight's action proposes a decrease in your millage rate from 6.554 in 2019 to 6.307 in 2020. That's a decrease of 0.247 mils. 6.307 mils means going to the fully calculated rollback rate. At a 97.5% collection rate, this drop in the millage rate will still net an additional $230,000 more than in 2019, and that is due to the new construction. So staff presents this 2020 millage rate for your consideration and approval.
Right. Any questions for Ron? Comments? No. This is a public hearing, so I'll open up that portion. Rhonda? Cody, do you know of anybody? All right. We'll close the public hearing and open up for discussion or motions.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Colin and a David second. Further discussion? Ward 1?
Aye.
2?
Aye.
3?
Aye.
4?
Aye.
5?
Aye.
6?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Ron. Item 8-9 is a vote on case A 102-19 South Cherokee Lane rezoning and variances, Nuanna.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is A 102-19 South Cherokee Lane annexation. If you'll go to the next slide for me, please. Thanks. So just to remind you a little bit about the history of this. So the case went before Planning Commission on February 6th. And at that time, they recommended approval and just made a couple of revisions to the staff conditions. You all heard this case at the end of February on the 24th. At that time, we did conduct the public hearing, had a few people speak. The case was tabled to the last meeting in March to allow the applicant time to complete a traffic study and review the variances. And then, as we all know, coronavirus impacted some of our meetings and kind of delayed things. So here we are tonight, and this would be in Council Ward 4. The applicant in this case is Toll Brothers, and they are represented by Parks Huff, who is with us in the chambers. If you'll go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Here's your zoning map. This is 5 parcels, south of Highway 92, west side of South Cherokee Lane. The subject parcels and the surrounding parcels are all zoned R80 in Cherokee County. You'll hear, as I talk a little bit more tonight, you'll see, you'll hear us talk about Lake Stone and Madison Falls. So I've identified those subdivisions for you as well. The map on the right is highlighting the project area. So again, it's 5 parcels. All of the parcels would be annexed and rezoned to R2 in the city. The 3 southern parcels would be the future development. The northern 2 parcels, parts of those parcels would be annexed and rezoned, and the existing structures would remain. A small portion of each of those parcels would be a part of this development. Next slide, please. All right, so here's an outline of their request along with the site plan. So again, their request is to annex into the city of Woodstock, rezone to R2 with no overlay. They're requesting variances to reduce the lot size and to reduce the setbacks. The plan is to develop an 84 single-family homes with an amenity area. A couple of other things just to point out here on the site plan. There is a strip along South Cherokee Lane to avoid creating an island. A 25-foot buffer along the properties that would be in unincorporated Cherokee County. And again, just reminding you about those two northernmost properties would be annexed and rezoned, but not entirely part of the development. Next slide, please. So again, their first request is annexation. So just touching on 3 items from the priorities list of the council policy manual: incorporating areas already receiving city services, 3, incorporating all property between the current city boundary and Cobb County, and then also annexations that may provide long-term municipal growth and expansion opportunities. Next slide. So their request here is to rezone the property to R2, and they've requested reduction of the minimum lot size and reduction of the minimum setbacks. They do meet the maximum density in R2, which is 3 units per acre, and that's what they're proposing. The requirements in R2, you can see in the table, a 12,000 square foot minimum lot size, and then the setbacks of 25 for the front, side 15, and rear 25. The applicant here is proposing a minimum lot size of 6,700 square feet, and they're requesting a 15-foot front setback, 5-foot side, and rear 15. Staff is proposing some changes to that. We're recommending a 7,500 square foot lot, 15 for the front, 7 for the side, and then 25 and 15 for the rear. So staff is supporting the front setback reduction as long as the minimum driveway length from the garage to the sidewalk is at least 21 feet. From a practical standpoint, and we've seen this in other developments, if the driveway is too short, you end up getting cars that hang over into the sidewalk and into the street. People don't park in the driveway, they end up parking on the street, and too many cars doing that could really be a public safety issue if there was an emergency. As far as the side setback, staff is recommending 7 feet instead of the 5 foot as requested, which puts them similar to adjacent developments. For the rear setbacks, staff is recommending the exterior lots along the exterior of the development be 25 feet against some of those larger lots that are adjacent, and then 15 on the interior where it'd be more dense. And just as a reminder from when we talked about this before, several months ago, the staff recommendation is really more of a compromise rather than approval based on hardships. We looked at what do the neighborhoods nearby look like, what are their standards, and so we tried to use that as we were making our recommendation. Next slide, please. Thanks. So talking a little bit more about the lot size, they did ask for a variance to the minimum lot size. The smallest lot they're showing on their site plan is about 6,700 square feet. Looking at the site plan overall, they are averaging about 9,200 square feet. Staff felt that 7,500 is the smallest lot size that we were comfortable with and would show support for. Again, that's putting it similar to adjacent developments. In evaluating these variance requests, we looked at adjacent developments. You've got the county lots that are nearby that are, they're zoned R80. They're large lot single family homes. But we've seen a lot of recent development in the city and in unincorporated Cherokee and unincorporated Cobb, which has brought a lot of smaller lot sizes, smaller housing footprints, and neighborhood amenities. So this development we felt does share some characteristics with the nearby Lake Stone, Madison Falls. And so with some of these things that we've talked about here tonight, similar in density, lot size, and has an amenity area. Next slide, please. So this starts our recommendation. And so DPC and Planning Commission voted to recommend approval as follows. So all of the subject properties shall be rezoned to R2, but the conditions stated below only apply to the 3 southern parcels. So that's 15N24, 171, 170, and 169. Condition number 2, variance is granted to allow a minimum lot size of 7,500 square feet. Number 3, variances to setbacks are granted as follows. So a front setback of 15 feet with a minimum distance of 21 feet from the garage to the sidewalk. B, side setback of 7 feet. And C, rear setback of 25 for exterior lots and 15 for interior lots. Next slide, please. Condition number 4, the required buffer against county properties must be located outside of residential lots and should be maintained by the homeowners association, and we would require any access easements needed for the common property. Number 5, this one requires the amenity area to be provided to include at a minimum a pool and pool house, and it should be permitted and under construction by the time that 50% of the building permits are issued. Next slide, please. So on this one, there's a few revisions here. Some are from Planning Commission. Some are from staff discussions after City Council in February after we looked at the traffic study. And these have been sent to legal. It just hasn't, we haven't received comment on them yet. So condition number 6 related to, it was originally about a northbound left turn lane from South Cherokee Lane into the development. And after we reviewed the traffic study, which showed that the left turn lane wasn't warranted, staff removed this condition. So number 6 is intentionally deleted. Number 7, the applicant shall contribute $50,000 towards road improvements on South Cherokee Lane. Applicant further agrees to contribute $15,000 to install a 4-way stop at the intersection of South Cherokee Lane with Lakestone Parkway and Bevington Lane, as approved by the city engineer. And these contributions shall be paid to the city of Woodstock prior to the issuance of the first final plat. Just to give you a little bit more information here, the applicant, in talks with us after the last council meeting, the applicant did volunteer to put in the stop sign. Yes, it was part of another case that was heard before you guys in the past. Janice, our city engineer, worked with a consultant to put together an estimate for this 4-way stop. So that's where that $15,000 amount came from specifically. Condition number 8, and this was a condition that came from, I believe, Planning Commission or discussions with the applicant and developer, or sorry, the developer and neighbors around the time of Planning Commission. So number 8 says the developer shall provide a pre and post development silt analysis of the Lakestone Lake with an easement or written consent provided by the Lakestone HOA. Any delta in that silt content as evidenced by the silt analysis shall be mitigated between the developer and the Lakestone HOA. So this revision here to this condition, staff made this revision when we were getting ready for the meeting. We were looking at this and we felt that the way it was originally written might be hard for us to enforce. We also can't grant for someone else to get on other private property. And we really felt that it should be an agreement between 2 private parties. So this puts that agreement here between the developer and Lakestone HOA. So the next slide does outline all the conditions all together. If you want to go to the next one. Thank you. There is a typo on number 7. I'll point it out. The dollar amount here is wrong. It should say 50,000 towards road improvements on South Cherokee Lane. Otherwise, everything reflects what we just talked about on the last couple of slides. Are there any questions for me on this? Otherwise, I can turn it over to Parks.
Anybody?
I've got a couple questions and I want to.
Okay, Colin.
I'm reading and this is the criteria for consideration of the variance request in the packet. And I'm trying to, I see the spirit of compromise, but you mentioned that there's not a particular hardship that is experienced here. And I think I'm trying to understand the thought process from DPC as to, they answer section B, that application of these regs doesn't create an unnecessary hardship. Section D is literal interpretation of the ordinance doesn't deprive applicants' rights. And E, relief from applying the ordinance could cause substantial detriment to the public good or impair the purposes and intent of the ordinance. So I'm trying to understand from the DPC perspective, just how do you balance this and compromise, and talk to us about the thought process there.
Trying to think back, it was a few months ago when we all met to talk about this. No, you're fine. I think when we originally met, we were thinking that some of the design standards may be more appropriate for an R3 zoning, but when we looked at what was in the area, both Lakestone and Madison Falls were annexation cases from mid 2000s, I think. And so they also got variances and some relief from some of the standards. So I think we looked at it as what was granted in those cases and tried to base some of our consideration off what would, kind of match as close as possible as what was granted in those and what's in the area.
That answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else for Nuana?
Mayor, I want to make it clear that we also represent Toll on other matters. Obviously, we're not representing him on this matter.
All right. Thank you for clarification. We'll turn it over to Parks.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Parks Huff with Sam's Larkin and Huff, and I represent Toll in relation to this annexation rezoning application. If I go to the part of the presentation, I had the aerial showing the properties outlined. Okay. There we go. Oh, there we go. That's perfect. And this is a very interesting case. What this is an annexation of some properties. There's 4 different property owners. I happen to know 2 of them, and when you get into an assembly of properties, everyone's got little different situations of what's going on in their lives, but they all need at this time to sell. And so they would like to be able to sell this property. It makes sense, given that Madison Falls there and the Lakestone are there, that it be annexed into the city of Woodstock. The other issue is that Toll would like to build a family-friendly community with an amenity package. And we know that there are certain thresholds that are needed to be able to have that. And their product is a home that's similar exactly to what's being built at Lakestone. It's a family-type neighborhood. One of the things that I know I appear before you often, and it's a challenge to get enough land to be able to do what I call a traditional suburban neighborhood. And actually, there is a real need for that in this area. We think of the big communities that were developed 15, 20 years ago, but now those are 15 and 20 years old. And so this is a new community that's going to come in and fill this need. And so that's one of the things that's driving a lot of the conditions that the staff has pointed out. Both of the Lakestone and Madison Falls were R2. We're asking for an R2 with a 3 unit per acre. And the conditions, there's only a couple of conditions that we have some questions about and that we would like to see if we can get some relief on. Number 1 is the minimum lot size is 7,500. Our minimum lot size is 6,700. Our average lot size is 9,200. We're fine if that be part of that condition. One of the conditions that happened is when we pulled buffers out of the lots, that squeezed our lot size. We all know that y'all want buffers outside of lots rather than lots. So that's one of the reasons why it kind of pushed that. As the staff had a great graphic showing, I think maybe 10 lots only have that slightly under the 7,500 square feet. And so that's number one. The other one seems real minor, but it is 3B with the side setback of 7 feet. They have run their product on it, and what they've got is a lot of times you're used to the senior product. It's a ranch that's narrow and deep. These are family-friendly products. They're often two stories, and they're wide. They're wider for a couple of reasons. One is because you have a smaller, the garage will look smaller in proportion to the width of the home. The wider the home you get, the smaller the garage in proportion looks. That's, so that 2 feet. 2 feet is what we're asking is to go to 5 foot side, 10 foot between to allow all their product line to fit on this and to be able to build this community. So that is the other condition. When we were asked last time to make sure that we did a traffic study to see what our traffic impact was. Our traffic study came back with that really, we don't cause any significant issues there. It did note that there's an existing problem at the entrance of Madison Falls and Lakestone, that a four-way stop would be very helpful at that location. It is a zoning condition for another case that has not moved forward on their development. So no telling when or if that zoning requirement would ever come into play. It is not as simple as, because of the way the turn lanes, decel lanes work there, it's not as simple as a lawyer might think of just sticking 4 stop signs out there. It's going to take some effort, engineering effort, and design effort. And so that's the reason why we've offered to put $15,000 towards that. I did talk to my client about whether we could make other contributions to potential just general improvements on South Cherokee Lane. And the comment was made, we would be glad to put in another $50,000, but we have to be able to build the project as we presented it. So that is something that we would be able to comply with if we can build the product as our engineers have designed. So unlike every other case I've worked with in South Cherokee Lane, this started pre-COVID, so it's not just COVID that did it. We had good public participation meeting here. We've had the support of the Lakestone community because they see us as new neighbors that will look like them in terms of the price points, in terms of the house size, in terms of that we will be a good neighbor to them. And so they have been very supportive of us throughout the process. The folks on South Cherokee Lane, they don't always love everything, but they recognize the fact that these are their neighbors who would like to sell for a similar development that what's around them, and that they should be given that opportunity to do that. And this is an opportunity for the city to add another family-friendly community in this section of the city for something that will be able to support an amenity package and be a vibrant, strong community. And so we ask that you approve the application and approve the annexation with the 2 minor exceptions. I have Adam here to give you some additional information, if you have questions about the development or their product. But I think you're very familiar with the Lakestone product and how they build a wonderful product and will continue to do so in the city, in this and hopefully other projects. And I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Quick question, Parks. In our agenda packet on agenda packet page, sorry, as I scroll to find it again. Packet page 346, there is a screenshot projected area map. It lists the 4 parcels, top parcel saying annex and rezone existing structures to remain, and the other 3 say future development, but it appears that the design is actually all parcels.
Correct. The 2 parcels to the north, as I said, everyone has a little bit different situations going in their lives. And they are selling basically the back portion of their properties, and the two homes that are on the front portion, I think they live in one, and I think the other one is a family member that lives in that, will remain. But the back of it is going to be part of our development. Does that answer your question?
So what we're looking at is the development of the entire parcels. And this isn't just one section and then you'll be back a year from now to do another.
No, they're just the two, they're gonna just leave two homes on their property.
Okay, so, all right, thanks.
For those two homes that will remain, is the land that they sit on used in the density calculations?
I don't believe it was. No,
So it's not.
no, it is not.
Thank you. How much traffic is on South Cherokee Lane there? Are y'all worried about people getting in and out of the neighborhood with traffic?
There was an initial condition that had a very specific design.
Yeah.
We have heard certainly people talk about that people like to speed on South Cherokee Lane. And what we have asked is that it be handled at plan review. I can tell you what we will potentially argue at plan review is that we actually put, strangely enough, a three-way stop at our entrance. It may sound kind of strange. And I'm not asking y'all to opine on one way or the other. That's something for the engineers to hash out. But we are thinking about it. And then that's one of the options is, because that would also keep people from, because that our stretch right there kind of goes up and down, but it's more straight. So if there's a stop point, that will slow people down from.
So y'all would prefer there be a stop sign there?
We would prefer it, but that's going to be up to your engineers. The county engineer would, I'm sure, opine on it, and our engineers will also. But yeah,
I'd probably prefer a stop sign there too. I get letting engineers that, with the caveat that a lot of times things that are okay technically by engineering standards feel different in person than they look on paper, right? So
I think what definitely feels very right is the four-way stop at Madison and Lakestone entrance. Because that is right as you're starting to come down the hill. I think that would be very, very helpful for those two communities to have that done. And we're glad to be a participant in that.
With the traffic study, it indicates the number of vehicles per day, but does that break down to a number of vehicles per household in any way?
Out of our community?
Of this, with the traffic study, it indicates the number of trips.
Yeah, I think the ITE manual has about 9 something per single-family detached household.
But it doesn't break down to the estimated number of cars, the average number of cars per household that can be expected?
No, actual vehicles, no, it doesn't. Just trips, yes. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. This is a vote, so I'll open up for discussion or motions.
I'll make a motion to approve. Bradley, can you go back to the slideshow on the staff recommendations? Or I guess it's not you, I guess it's Jeff. I thought there was another one. Or is that
Well, this is the summary, I think.
Okay.
Are you looking for what the staff had or what they're proposing?
I thought there was like a different, like they were showing the setbacks.
It's number under number 3 there. No, the other way.
Okay, all right.
See number 3?
Yes, okay. Yeah. I just thought there was like the graph of what was proposed. And so make a motion to approve based on the staff's recommendation of 1, 4, 5. Now 7, one says 100,000, one says 50,000, so I'm okay with the 50,000. This one says 100, but the other one that was in blue says 50,000.
It's 50.
Which, no, which was it? 50? Okay.
50.
Okay. So number 7 with the 50,000 contribution in the stop sign. And then the number 8. Now, what my struggle is with 2 and 3. So, Parks, what'd you say that you needed your?
We get 6,700 with an average of 9,200. That would be great for 2.
So your 6,200, where's that? Like that's going to be in the
67.
6,700.
6,700. That going to be in the middle?
Yeah, there was a graphic that showed where those were at, and then if you want to add an average of 9,200, so that it's not all that, and then the other only one was B was 5 instead of 6.
Okay. So my motion is for the variance for 6,700 with an average of 92, and then the side setback of 5, and the rest of the setbacks are fine.
All right, we have a motion with stated changes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by David. Further discussion.
So you're, so as far as the setbacks, you're okay with 15, 200 on the,
Yes, everything except for B, which was 5 instead of 7.
what about the minimum distance to the garage 21?
Yes.
So you would keep steps 3A and 3C.
Yes.
But 3B would be a side setback of 5 feet.
Yes. And then the number 2 was 6,700 with a maximum of 92.
A minimum
An average
of
of
700 and
92.
average of 9,200.
Any other questions?
And just to confirm on 7, you
Oh, that was 50,000.
though you lowered the 100 to 50, that does not negate the 4-way stop contribution.
No, doing the 4-way stop contribution.
So 50,000 plus the 15. And okay.
Anybody else?
Do you have any thoughts on a 3-way stop there on South Cherokee?
I'm fine with that. I mean, that stop sign is going to be the one that's supposed to be the storage unit. The one that they're going to
I know. I know there have been speed studies in the past on this road where we've seen people speeding.
Right, and whatever the engineers.
Well, so Brantley, what would be a process there that the engineers could review and make recommendations, or should we have to make the recommendation prior to?
Sorry, so say that one more time.
After we voted, assuming this was approved, would there be a process by which engineers could do an assessment on that 3-way stop and further say, yes, it needs to be designated as a 3-way stop? And what are the conditions under which they would do so?
We did the same kind of study, or Janice did, when we did the 4-way for the street. So we would do the same review here. There's warrants for something like that. So she would use whatever accepted standards we have to evaluate that and make that decision. City engineer.
If we dictated it, would we have to prove warrants?
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, could we say there needs to be a 3-way stop there just right now and not have to go prove it needs to be there using warrants?
I would recommend you probably want to contingent on it being warranted, just because that's going to be backstopped with things like Georgia DOT standards, and there's good reasons for those standards that are defensible. So I would recommend that you would want it to be based in a grounded standard that we got. That would be my recommendation.
So if I'm hearing you right, number 7 could include the phrase, the 3-way stop will be installed should engineering warrant. Something to that effect.
Right.
Eldon, did you hear that?
Yes, she just needs to accept that as an amendment, and the second needs to do that if that's what you want.
And I'm fine with that for number 7.
Okay,
So you'd have to amend and David would have to second, right?
right. You're okay with the, right? David, you're okay with the amendment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Opposed?
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 5-1. Accompanying agenda item is 810, first reading on A 102-19 South Cherokee Lane Annexation and Charter Amendment. Nuana, anything to add?
No, sir.
Nuana?
No, sir, nothing to add. This is just the annexation agenda item for the same case. There's no presentation for it or anything.
Okay. All right, I'll open up for discussion or motions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a David and a Tracy. Any further discussion? Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Opposed?
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you.
You all. Skipping down to item 9 under new business. Number 1, Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank Loan Agreement with the State Road and Tollway Authority for the Woodstock Hub Transformation Project, Brantley. You didn't think I was going to get through it, did you?
Got like those long titles. I don't have a slide for this particular item. We did include the loan agreement in the packet. We've been working with Eldon. We work with him on the agreement. We'll probably continue to work through the documentation, but the loan is for, you recall, we got the grant and the loan. The grant was for 1.25. The loan is for just over 2 million, as you said, for the Woodstock Hub Transformation Project's construction money. So we would want to go ahead and enter into the agreements now, although we would likely not go to construction until first quarter, well, probably end of first quarter, first or second quarter 2021 calendar year. So that's kind of what we're looking at tonight. And we're just trying to get our documentation done. Obviously, the entire award from CERTA for the project, including loan and grant, was about 3.25. So we're really excited about that. Look forward to constructing the project. So just want to get our paperwork in order with the State Road and Tollway Authority so we can move forward with the project in the coming months. And it's in full design right now, right away. It'll begin, I think, pretty soon.
That's it? All right. Any questions? All right. I'll need a motion.
You have a motion to approve?
Second.
And we have a Tracy and a David. Y'all are tag teaming tonight. Any further discussion? Ward 1?
Aye.
2?
Aye.
3?
Aye.
4?
Aye.
5?
Aye. Aye.
6?
Aye. Motion
Carries 6-0. Item 9-2 is the MAJBA JE 9253-4215 Hub Transformation Project. Easy for me to say. Rob?
Mayor, real quick, I'm going to recuse myself.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. This is to follow up on item 9-1 that Brantley just talked about. 9-2 is the major budget amendment that brings the loan, the grant, and the city expenses all in line with a major budget amendment. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the incredible hard work and ingenuity from Brantley Day, who drove this project from the very beginning, conceived it and drove it through with the toll authority, the application, and he just did a magnificent job for the city of Woodstock to bring in this funding source. So this particular item is the city's been awarded the grant and loan from the State Road and Toll Authority through the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank. So this budget amendment is to budget the awarded grant and loan proceeds as well as the city portions in accordance with the SRTA and the GTIB agreements that have been mentioned previously. And with that, we request council's approval of this major budget amendment. Any questions?
Anybody? All right, having heard none, I'll entertain a motion.
Give a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a Colin and a David. Any further discussion? Ward 1 has abstained. 2?
Aye.
3?
Aye.
4?
Aye.
5?
Aye.
6?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Somebody tell Warren. There you go. Thank you, sir. Item 11 are the minutes approval from the June 20th, 2020 special called meeting and work session. Are there any changes or corrections needed? Having heard none, I'll entertain a motion.
You have a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a Tracy and a David. Any further discussion? Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Abstain.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Under comments, my only thing is, does everybody feel safe the way the setup is?
Yep.
Y'all are okay?
I do.
How about staff? Since you're all spread out. All right, any council member have anything?
I do feel safe, and I'm glad to return and be able to actually have some interaction and discussion. But if there's any way possible to make the audio for the online participants a little better, that would be fantastic. What about those speakers? Is there any way to pipe it in? Thanks.
Yeah, I think your audio problem may be on your end,
Jeff's
because we can hear each
eyebrows on
other
it.
quite well. And you're
What's
not
that?
hearing us so well, but we hear each other that are logged in remotely really well, I think. It's just you guys aren't hearing us so well. But our video of you is blinking quite a bit. So it would be nice to be able to see who's at the podium from their face instead of from behind when they're talking too.
Okay. I think Cody and Jeff will be working on things to improve, if possible. That was a shout out to Jeff.
Yes. Thank you for the effort to do this. I know
Yeah.
it's a lot of work.
Anybody else? I turn it over to Jeff Moon.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have an update for you. So of our roughly $1.7 million allotment under the CARES Act, we've received a check for the first installment of $518,855. This meeting will be going over the project list for that, and there'll be several for you that we need input on and for you to approve. A couple of just highlights. One of them does include technology upgrades at the chambers. So maybe addressing some of the very things that you're discussing that are challenges right now. The other thing that the hazard pay that you approved for police and fire is eligible for reimbursement. So, we'll be taking the reimbursement from that first allotment. So we'll have you a full briefing at your next meeting. The other thing is I do need to request an executive session. A couple of notes. Number one, there is an action item on the agenda after executive session And we will be asking, Eldon and I will be asking you to add an item in addition to take action on tonight. So wanted to make sure that we were clear that there'll be a couple of items council will be voting on after the executive session.
All right. We'll need a motion to go into executive session to discuss real estate litigation and personnel.
You have a motion?
Second.
We have a Warren, right? And Tracy. Further discussion? 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5.
You said aye.
Okay, 6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Jeff, were you finished in the computer room? No. No?
So we just could send because the encoder, the sound card encoder
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Jeff. Jeff. Jeff or Rhonda. We can hear you guys. Jeff.
They're on mute now. Can you hear me?
Eldon, we're gonna have to get some kind of stand for your phone, man.
Yeah. Let me know when everybody's on, Jeff.
It's an iPad Pro.
That's what I got. I'll send you a link to something you need to get.
Okay.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to go back into regular session.
You have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Jeff?
Yes, sir. Item 14.1 is the service delivery strategy Form 2s that Cherokee County presented the cities. I emailed this document to you yesterday. It's 110 pages and includes multiple Form 2s for services offered by the county or the cities or both, or by an authority in the county. So staff recommendation is for mayor and council to approve all of the Form 2s presented by the county with 2 exceptions. Number 1 being the form they presented for Parks and Recreation, and number 2 being the form they presented for roads and bridges. So the approval would be for all the other forms.
All right.
You have a motion to add this item to the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Well, the motion, the item is already on the agenda.
Oh, sorry.
So all you need to do is motion whether you want to approve or not.
I move to approve.
I'll second that.
Still second.
And
Further
just for clarification purposes on the motion and the second, it's for my recommendation not to include the roads and bridges and the Parks and Recreation forms.
Exactly. I agree.
And that was my understanding as well.
Okay. Any more? All right. Ward 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
3.
Aye.
4. 5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. I'll call on Eldon now.
Yes, we have received 2 anti-litem notices demanding $5 million in settlement. I don't think that's cumulative, but each one referenced $5 million in settlement of the allegations that the city owes Calvin Taylor for the Stars and Strikes incident. And my recommendation is that we have a vote to deny that demand so that we can send them a letter and notify them that the council has denied that demand.
I'll make a motion.
All right.
to deny. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Add them to the agenda.
Make a motion to deny anti-litem notices, Calvin Taylor.
This one we have to add.
Oh, do we? Okay, my bad. Oh,
You still adding?
You got it? I'm still seconding.
Okay. Further discussion. Ward 1.
Aye.
2.
aye.
3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Now, David,
Make a motion to deny
Second.
deny the anti-litem.
anti-litem notices from Calvin Taylor due to the Stars and Strikes, both of them.
All right, you still second?
Still second.
Further discussion. Ward 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Anything else, Jeff?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
You have a motion?
Second.
We have a Warren and a Tracy. Any further discussion? Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night, Eldon.
Is the coach still up here? I need to know if I can go home.
What?
So I need to know if I can go home. Because 92 was shut down earlier. Because of
I think it was just one side, wasn't it?
no,
It was both sides?
They
Oh,
weren't
okay.
letting you go down neat, and I came out.